I sent him a broken record, which nobody wanted to touch. Everybody I played it for was like, oh. I mean, he was like, oh man, you gotta let me do this song. You gotta let me do this song. Hi, I'm Sheryl Crow, and this is Billboard News.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Milzoff. I'm the executive magazine editor here at Billboard, and I am so psyched to be here today with Sheryl Crow, one of my personal heroes.
If it makes you happy, 'cause all I wanna do is have some fun. The first cut is the deepest.
Happily, contrary to what she told us 4 years ago, she did not put out her last album in 2019, and she has an amazing new album, Evolution, coming.
Yes, thank you. I know better than to open my mouth and make such statements. But I keep saying that this is not an album. It's more a playlist of new Sheryl Crow songs.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this old song for you guys. It's old, but it's on the record, Evolution, that's just come out. Bill Bottrell and I made the Detours record when my 16-year-old was like 4 months old, and we wrote this song after it was done, but nothing ever happened with the song, and so I have carried it around in my heart for all these years and just felt like this was the time for it to come out, so we put it on this record. It's called Where.
What's the difference between an album and a playlist?
I'll tell you, and I am kind of joking about that, but not really. An album for me typically has been an artistic statement with a beginning, a middle, and end. It's been curated. You know, certain songs didn't make it, and people would listen to it as a full body of work. Now with playlists, obviously, I could wind up on a playlist with Shakira and Brandy and Ice Spice. I mean, you know, this record didn't start out to be a record. It was just a bunch of songs I was writing after my kids would go to school, and just grappling with artificial intelligence and just what that's going to mean in the future for not only artists but for our kids. And I just started writing, and I sent all these demos to my friend Mike Elizondo, who's a great music producer, and I said, I don't want to produce myself. I don't even know what I have here. Here's 5 songs. Do you like them? Do you want to produce them? Like, just make little movies out of them? And he did, and so I just kept going.
Evolution, ever changing, lost in space.
Going back to when you thought Threads was going to be your last album, what had kind of led you to that realization, and what did it feel like to kind of make that statement in the first place?
To make that statement, it felt liberating for me, because I've grappled through the last few years of watching people not buy albums, as an artist having no idea who your fan base is, of watching young artists. I mean, I don't know how people make it anymore, because if you consider you only get paid on a stream if people listen to at least 30 seconds of a song, and you only still get paid pennies. For somebody who grew up before the advent of technology and streaming, it's felt really demoralizing. It's felt antithetical to artistry. And I felt like the last album, the Threads album, felt like a wonderful bookend to a 30-year career based in collaboration and love of the art form, but that I would continue to write songs and just put them out, just one song at a time, because that's kind of how it winds up being anyway. It's just on playlists. But this, I don't know, I wound up with like 9 songs. I was like, well, let's just put them all out at the same time. It feels like an emotional download as opposed to like a curated album.
I like that emotional download.
Yeah.
We will get into that. But speaking about Mike, I mean, he's an amazing producer. But I was going to say, I think that sort of an overlooked aspect of your artistry is the fact that you're a producer. Like, you have produced many of your albums, and you became someone who knew about how a studio worked like quite early on in your career, which is still all too rare for women artists.
Yeah, I started producing myself on the second record, and I loved it. I mean, I felt like I was on a monumental learning curve, and I'm still, I love the act and the art of learning. You know, I'm not the greatest bass player or the greatest guitar player, or the greatest songwriter, or the greatest singer, or the greatest producer, but I feel like I'm always getting better, and that's what keeps me wanting to do it. It keeps me inspired. It keeps me feeling like my best work's in front of me. But that being said, on this bunch of songs, because they felt like little diary entries or letters to myself and to my kids, I didn't want to go in and do what I already know I do. I wanted my mind to be blown. You know, I wanted the story, the screenplay that was the story of each song to have its own world. And I didn't want to do it myself. I wanted somebody to just show me what was capable in the area of cinematography, if you will, sonic cinematography, to just take these little vignettes and I say Martin Scorsese them, but yeah, Vin Vendors them or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way of describing kind of Mike's thing, but I was curious why he in particular felt like the right producer for this.
He just kept coming up for me, largely because I wanted to do Digging in the Dirt, and I kept feeling like I got to do this song and I got to do it with Mike. And then everything else kind of just came together.
This time you got too far. This time you got too far.
And then I sent him another song. I sent him Broken Record, which nobody wanted to touch. Everybody I played it for was like, oh. Not producer-wise, but like friends. Even my kids were like, you can't put that out.
You'll hate me more when you hear this song.
Why?
I sent it to him, and he was like,
a
oh,
funny
man,
song.
you got to let me do this song. You got to let me do this song. I think people were nervous about how it feels specifically pointed at people who wield hate. Mm-hmm. And nobody in my life wants to see me cross the line of getting myself in trouble. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When I spoke out about the Covenant shooting, which was a year ago today, even my parents were worried. They were like, just worry about your safety. We had tons of death threats. But the thing that was more troublesome to me were the people that I knew that were not just on the opposite side, but that were not willing to, let's come together and talk about, with good intention, about what we can do to make things safe, you know? Mm-hmm. So the song really was born of that.
And it has a sense of humor somehow.
Yeah, it does. I mean, because the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Everybody wants their kids to be safe. It becomes about ego and who's right and who's wrong, you know? Mm-hmm. And my mom has always said, it's just as easy to be nice as it is to be a jerk. So...
This is true. I mean, what you said about the idea of an emotional download, I think the pervading feel of the album to me is one of reflectiveness, of someone who is still frustrated with a lot of things about the world, but has maybe arrived at a place of realizing there's not a solution to everything. Yeah. Kind of what can I do and also stay sane? Yeah. What you mentioned AI, and we'll get to that too, but what were you kind of generally thinking about that you were channeling into the songs?
Well, I think anytime you, as an artist, anytime you write or paint or whatever, you're bringing your, not only your life experience, but that moment to your art. And for me, what my life was informing my art is a head-scratching moment of who are we, who have we become, and what are we heading toward? And
very small questions.
Very small. I mean, it's really upbeat. It's a dance record. I know it does sound like a downer, but honestly, I look at it and I go, I'm only talking about the very things that every single person is thinking about every day. Because that's the human experience, you know, especially if you're a mom and you're raising kids and knowing, you know, what's coming, when truth, which is the easiest thing. I mean, when you're raising little kids, you say, well, you just don't, you know, you never tell a lie. The truth is always important. And now it's like, truth? I mean, it's not based, my algorithm is telling me that my truth is right, you know? Mm-hmm. It's very confusing. So as an artist, I mean, I'm very lucky I have a place to go to literally download how do I feel about this? And what are the questions I have, and does anybody have any answers? I'm just throwing it out there in music form.
Mm-hmm. I, of course, don't know how the exact timelines lined up, but having seen the documentary about you, Sheryl, which is great.
It's always hard to look back and talk about who you were, because it's only who you think you were.
That required so much reflection on your part, kind of looking back on everything you've been through in the music industry. how it's intersected with what's happening in the real world as well, both good and bad. And I was curious whether that experience at all kind of helped put you in that mindset of kind of thinking about these things.
I think the thing that's put me in this mindset more than anything is raising kids, because the questions aren't like questions I grew up with. My kids do say I was born in the last century, and not
actually true,
not
but
quite, but as far as technology is concerned, yes, I was. But I mean, some of the things that they are already talking about, they're already concerned about, are things I was concerned about whether I was going to be able to put gas in my car. I wasn't concerned about whether there were going to be enough trees to provide oxygen for all, whether I was going to go to school and be shot. It's another world. So doing the documentary was definitely a game changer in that it's rare you sit down and literally reflect on your entire life, and it's really hard work. It was really exhausting. But I think that in conjunction with COVID and everybody was isolated and having that time to reflect, it's made me feel so much more precious about the wonderful job that I have and that I can use my job to help me. You know what I mean? If other people enjoy it, that's great, but it helps me.
No way of dealing with this feeling.
The album itself has a couple of very big collaborations on it. And collaboration has been such a huge part of your career. I feel like I'm still discovering Sheryl Crow collaborations I didn't even know existed. What has your attitude been about collaboration throughout your career, whether it's in performance or on record?
I think the biggest blessings for me have been the collaborations. I mean, I can remember specifically standing on stage in Modena, Italy, and singing Mozart with Pavarotti and seeing my parents in the audience and them just being overwhelmed with emotion. I'm sure it's because they were like, oh my gosh, all the years of piano lessons, they paid off. She's like a real musician, But I mean, just, you can't envision it. When you're a kid from a town of 3 stoplights, you can't envision going to Italy, let alone singing with Pavarotti and then singing with Eric Clapton. And there have been so many of those experiences that have really, I think, it's taken me a long time to actually really experience it in my body. But when it's happening, singing with Chris Christopherson, singing with Willie, singing with Emmylou, singing with Stevie, when it's happening, there's not anything like the sound of 2 voices and the vibrations they make and how it changes the molecules in the room. And I can write the greatest songs in the world, but until I sing them with someone, you don't know the full effect.
I'm thinking in the dirt. Stay with me, I need.
Well, I mean, speaking of magical blending of voices, we should talk about Digging in the Dirt.
Oh my goodness.
Which I think I audibly squealed when I saw that you were doing this with Peter Gabriel. I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan.
I am too.
And such a great song too. Talk a little bit about how that happened in the first place and why that song was the song for you.
Yeah, it's a really weird thing. But in the last few years, I decided I would really investigate what it meant to sort of redirect my impulses. And I did a curated, through Johns Hopkins, mushroom journey, psilocybin journey. And to me, what it felt like, literally, for me, nature has been the only place I've actually been able to hear myself. Mm-hmm. It felt like I was digging through dirt. I mean, almost like any of the videos that he would have made where, you or even the old science videos where you see ants digging through,
Which is what his music video is like, pretty much.
Yes, exactly. And so that song kept coming up for me. And one morning I was out jogging and the song came on my playlist. And I called Mike Elizondo and I said, I don't even know why I'm calling you except to say, I need to do this song and I need you to produce it. And would you do it? And he was like, yeah. Then we did it and we sent it to Peter and he loved it and he sent it back with his voice on it. And
apropos of nothing.
It's just crazy. You know, I'm a huge proponent of or believer in manifesting, but I don't know that I could have manifested that in 1,000 years, except to say that at a certain point you do enough work and enough digging that somehow the dirt falls together, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, coming sort of after hearing the rest of the album, it really seems thematically on point too.
It was, I think, the jumping off point for the whole record.
Mm-hmm.
From that came Evolution. And then from Evolution came Broken Record. And then from that came Do It Again. And they were all things that led back to who am I? What do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to change the world around me? And how do I model that to my children?
Mm-hmm. Another great collaboration on Evolution with Tom Morello. Which I listened to it before I even realized it was Tom, and I was like, who is absolutely shredding in the middle of this song? And then I was like, oh, of course it's Tom Morello.
Oh my God. I mean, honestly, he and I both were going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Mike had created this crazy sci-fi track around evolution, which is what it wanted and what it needed. And then he goes, what do you think about getting Morello to play? And I was just like, oh my gosh. And when he sent it back, I mean, I reached out to him. He's like, yeah, send it. So, I mean, there's nobody that plays like him. And it literally sounded like Ray Bradbury had taken a guitar and eaten it and just regurgitated it into this incredible, like, where am I going here? So cool.
Like outer space,
yes.
Totally. Is this possibly the first rock song about AI? I was thinking this to myself.
I don't know. I've not run across any, but I'm sure there will be many. I can tell you for a fact that I've heard a demo of a song that a friend of mine wrote, and she interjected John Mayer's voice onto the demo for $5. And it made me cry. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so scary. It sounded so real. So yeah, it's scary territory.
Turned on the radio and there it was, a song that sounded like something.
I mean, the song starts out with you kind of, I don't know if it's imagined or real, envisioning hearing the song that you swear is your voice, but you somehow know is not. Where did that kind of scene come from and sort of lead you into the idea of investigating this in a song?
Well, it came from reading about what the Beatles were doing. And while that was different, I know that they used AI to pull John's vocal off. I just started thinking about, my manager and I have had numerous conversations about this. I'm like, if I ever go down on a plane, I don't want you releasing my old demos. I want my demos in lock and key. I don't want people making money off of stuff I didn't want to come out. But this was a different thing. This was like the George Carlin thing where somebody could just take his image and, manipulate it to use their jokes or whatever. And I started thinking about that, and that's how it came about. Just the fear of where are we going on this? And the one thing that was comforting to me is the fact that AI can't learn empathy. Mm-hmm. It can't learn soul. It can't learn compassion. It has no spirit.
We can feel love 'cause it's written in the human code.
Everything in life is about intention. You want to give money to somebody who needs money, you can't worry about whether they go and climb into their Ferrari. The blessing is in the intention. It is the thing that is going to be tantamount when it comes to AI, and that is what's the intention behind it. If somebody's using it for dark purposes, then it's bad. If somebody's using it to discover treatments for cancer, it's great,
Mm-hmm. I have to ask about you and Olivia Rodrigo. You seem to have a real great relationship at this point. She recently performed with you. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's evolved and why that
Well, I
happened?
met Olivia at the Women in Music, the Billboard Women in Music. And I was a fan already. I mean, I listen to her stuff and I go, oh my gosh, I can hear The Breeders. I can hear Blondie. She's got that real punk rock thing that I hadn't heard in so long. Mm-hmm. But then she has these great lyrics and these great hooks, and so I was kind of impressed with that. And then I met her, and very different than my situation. She came up in the business. I was 28 when I first made it. You know, I'd already been a school teacher and everything else. But I liked how grounded she was. I liked that she seemed sort of out of, you know, with regard to the fame thing, that wasn't her major attraction, you know. Just got to know her, really like her. I feel like she just keeps writing her truth. She's got an experience that backs up everything in her songs. I just like her, you know, I root for her.
I feel like over the past 5 years, there has been a great influx of Sheryl Crow covers that we get to hear from artists like this. And I'm curious whether you have a favorite Sheryl Crow cover you've heard, especially as someone who herself started in a covers band.
Yes, I did. Kashmir in Columbia, Missouri, at the University
Amazing
of Missouri.
name for a band.
Yes. I loved Chaim.
Are you strong enough to be my man?
I mean, you seem very, you know, not reinvigorated, but feeling very into making music right now. Like, has the experience of Evolution made you rethink the album thing going forward? Like, have you adjusted what the prognostication is?
I think I wrote 6 or 7 songs, including Digging in the Dirt. We did that. And then I wound up with 2 old songs that I really felt were important to put on there. And, you know, it wound up just being like 8 or 9 songs that literally feels like a playlist. You know, it feels like all new songs. I think I would forevermore approach it like that, where as I'm writing something, I'm not thinking about, okay, I've written an up-tempo song, now I need to write a mid-tempo song. Instead of, as a record maker, just putting songs out. Whether I put them out like a whole bunch of songs or put them out like, okay, here's a song, here's a couple of songs. I don't know what comes next. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yes.
That's an answer I can live with.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sheryl.
Thanks
really
for having
great
me.
to talk to you.